It's the battle of the mediocre, with P2 in the championship being treated like the least desirable chocolates in the box, which, let's face it, whoever put strawberry in chocolate needs to be put on some kind of register, and any team that has posed a threat to it seems to meet a sticky demise through incompetence or incapability to compete. Aston Martin's fall from grace this year has been well catalogued, and after a good showing this weekend, we thought we would not kick them as they attempt to get back up. We can do that when they inevitably crumble again, so we'll let them have their moment back in the sun. And Mclaren's late season charge was left far too late to be a viable threat to Mercedes and Ferrari, with the blunt arrows and the Screwederia flailing at each other with petty point finishes if their cars even make the checkered flag, with the odd showing of individual brilliance or the stars aligning blessing either team with a podium, with each team's drivers sitting 5th, 6th, 7th and a joint 9th, yikes George Russell, in the podium standings this year. Want to know if this poor fortune is temporary, or is there a real threat that we're witnessing a pair of giants falling to a death by 1,000 self-inflicted cuts? And stick around to the end, because there's something big coming in the future which could spell doom for either of the teams, or even both of them. Let's start with Ferrari, which is actually quite a difficult task as their ongoing incompetence and comical failures create an Ouroboros of misery, resulting in sad Italian noises and no clear place to start when it comes to breaking down their failures. This in itself is a core issue for Ferrari, as throwing in yet another team principal to fix the issues within the team is like bringing a super soaker to a forest fire. Fred Vasseur is in a truly unenviable position, as he is truly fighting seemingly unwinnable battles on all sides, something he may not have been accustomed to at the sleepy Sauber headquarters. This weekend was a prime example of the firefighting that he has had to do far too many times this season, and while he is certainly better than it than his predecessor, it still can't be easy. When talking about the engine failure that rendered Charles Leclerc unable to compete following securing P2 in qualifying, Vasseur had this to say: "It's more than disappointing. We bet everything on the race, and we were very focused today. And for a technical problem, we didn't even start the race. Charles is very disappointed, and so is the team. We still need to check the car and see what happened in detail. It was a problem in the system, but we haven't touched the car yet, so we don't have much information. It wasn't a mistake from Charles." An interesting thing of note here is when Vasseur says that they bet everything on the race. That seems like it wasn't exclusive to one side of the garage, with clear markers of possible engine issues present on Sainz's car during the sprint, forcing him to lift and coast from early on in the sprint event, as well as ongoing issues with gearbox or clutch during the race. While temperature management was something that was present across the field, Ferrari seemed to be suffering with it to a more severe extent than anyone else on the Saturday session, with Sainz reporting that he had to lift and coast at pretty much every corner on the lap. While this was initially mentioned in connection with saving as many good sets of tyres as possible for Sunday, Fred Vasseur acknowledged that "We made a small mistake on the cooling today, and we asked the drivers to do a massive lift and coast from lap 2. Which begs the question, to what extent was this issue limited to just the tyres, as pretty much every team running a Ferrari power unit experienced technical frailties, failures and fracas that threatened to end their race early, or in the case of the Alfa Romeo drivers, did end their races early. Technical issues in the fight for P2 and the constructors aren't just limited to the red corner, however, as Mercedes have been, through fault or misfortune, unable to finish with both cars in the points or even on track at all in 5 of the last 8 races, with this weekend in Brazil proving to be a real low point for the team, with Toto Wolff calling it the team's worst performance in 13 years. Which, when we're taking into consideration weekends like that one in Catalonia or that one at Hockenheim happened during that time, then that is quite the statement. When talking about what happened in Brazil, Wolff lamented, "It's totally baffling and unacceptable. We are a proper structure, a solid team, but it didn't look like a solid team today. For me personally, it was the worst weekend in 13 years in Formula 1. The development of that car has been about putting plasters on something that was not right, and it shows that it is so unpredictable that it can swing to either side. Fundamentally, we will have a different car next year, and today proves that that is the right thing to do." So it would appear that Mercedes are going for a full factory reset, which, given the move to reinstate James Allison and fully bin off Mike Elliott, should come as no surprise. But following 2 years of failure, has their ability of being habitual winners started to wear off? A step backwards is a step backwards, and the reinstatement of Allison is a pretty significant step, especially when taking into consideration the lack of on-track performance as well as the back-of-house unrest. Every attempt Mercedes has had to move forward has failed. From zero pod to zero Allison, they just have categorically not worked out and sowed more unrest to be settled, started more fires to put out. For the vast majority of this year, Mercedes have been outperformed by at least one customer team, alluding to major systemic issues within the team which seem to have originated from the fatal mistake to entrust Mike Elliott with responsibilities that were seemingly beyond both his ability and charisma to handle when it all went wrong. So both teams are attempting to tread water as papaya sharks circle and British racing green clouds descend. All the while, vaguely threatening French noises can be heard off in the distance from a boat on fire. With Red Bull clearly dominant and neither team looking to be in a position to gain more than 19 points with a single driver in the final 2 weekends, what does this mean for the teams in both the short term and the long term? Short term, unless Verstappen turns up in a Formula forklift or wears a blindfold to actually feel challenged, we can't see Ferrari gaining enough points over 2 weekends to overtake Mercedes without the Silver Arrows going on to out-terrible themselves and have their worst race in 13 years in 3 successive races. Long term is more interesting and could potentially prove to be a real problem for both teams. 2 words: new regulations. Both teams have been able to rely on an abundance of trackside R&D information collected for them by customer teams to improve their engines both performance and reliability wise. But with 6 options on the grid, 5 realistic ones if we exclude Renault, when paired with a continuous display of incompetence and inability to reach the top step on the podium, then just how long can Ferrari and Mercedes rely on their already existing and quickly outdated reputations? In the case of Ferrari, their customer teams seem to be constantly experiencing issues varying from performance limiting, or in the case of Sauber this weekend, performance ending. The mentality of "it's red so it must be fast, if you know you know" relies so much on the form of yesteryear for Ferrari, and the fact that they experience the same issues, sometimes to an even greater extent than their customers, cannot be ignored. Unless Vasseur is able to be the firefighter that Ferrari brought him in to be and continues not to address the structural issues within the team, then teams like Haas, as let's remember, Sauber will be running Audi engines, possibly along with a few other teams on the grid, will be given even more reasons to see red and cut their ties with the Screwederia for the duration of the new engine regulations. Mercedes, meanwhile, have a bit more credit in the bank, given that their era of dominance started this century and only ended a couple of years back, with aero regulations being the key factor to cause them to drop in performance. While they're losing Aston Martin to Honda, they still have 2 customer teams to secure into the 2026 regulations, with Williams committing even further into the relationship by using Mercedes' gearbox and hydraulics, and McLaren having until 2025 to decide their future when it comes to their engine partner. While Andrea Stella has said that the ideal situation would be to be a works team, he acknowledges that this is an unrealistic scenario, and since siding with Mercedes, McLaren have seen their greatest period of success in over a decade, while of course it has been patchy due to them getting the aero package wrong and turning up with a B-spec mid-season. So moving forward, Merc still appears to be the number 2 team for now, and the most likely to maintain their status into the new regulations and hold significant power across the front, midfield, and backmarker regions of the grid, which poses this question to Ferrari: just when will you sort it out? Because we can't see their drivers taking kindly to this inconsistency, both on and off track, much longer.